welcome back to Chase's Everything Shooting. Today's episode's about where's the brass? You know, I don't know if you've been looking out there or you needed some extra cases, but you know, they're getting hard to find. And I started doing a little research and yeah, there's a lot of problems out there getting brass cases. Now, as a reloader, I reload a lot of my own brass. I keep it, I tumble it, I do all that kind of stuff. But you know what? There are occasions when I build my hunting rounds, I'd like to start off with new cases. It seems to give me a really good feeling. Now I know there's no data on it that says a new case is gonna give you a better shell, better trajectory, better this. It just makes me feel a little more comfortable that my accuracy and my load's always gonna be right on. I mean, it's like the big shooters that do it competitively, you know, they'll reuse the same cases quite a few times, but they've got that thing honed in so far that they can tell you if there's an issue with that case, with the bullet, with the load, with the primer. You know, I have to tell you, I'm good, not that good. I have a buddy of mine that is, but you know, when I've got problems, I call him. He's been reloading for 40 something years. So he kind of steps me through some of the things. So let's get to what's going on in the brass. What's happening in the market? There are a lot of factors happening out there, but I'm going to start with inflation. Inflation is definitely one of those things that is affecting the copper market, which they make brass out of. And that market is a commodities market. Now, I know you've seen on TV, hey, you know, the cost of pork bellies and coffee and corn and wheat and all these different things, those are all traded on the commodities market. And so copper is traded on the commodities market. Pardon me. So copper has been continually going up and up and up. The last time I checked the spot price, and that's what they call it, is on that day, on that second that you check the pricing, that's called spot pricing, the brass was running $4.59 a pound. Now, probably doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you think back when Biden took office, copper was running about $3.52 a pound. And so it's gone up over 130%. Now, really, if you look at the largest increases, those have been the last 24 months. So things are really starting to change. And you need to be aware of that because the prices are still just going up. Now, if you go on the web and you start looking, the first thing you're probably going to see is copper prices, and they're not going to do it by the pound. They're going to do it by the metric ton, okay? And I don't know why I'm really giving you this, but I'm just going to throw that out there. So if you do check the numbers and you want to kind of watch it, that's what's going on. Everything's done in a metric ton. You got to divide the metric ton out by pounds, then divide that out, and that gives you your price per pound. So anyway, that's the big thing that's going on is the price of copper, which is made out of, they add zinc to it to make your brass. That price is starting to skyrocket. And that's a huge thing because as the base price of those products go up, that is going to definitely affect us in the reloading industry. Now, you know, most of you are probably saying, hey, you know what? I reload the same ones over and over and over. Well, I do when I go to the range or I take people out shooting and stuff. But occasionally when I'm going out and I'm going deer hunting or I'm hunting anything really, I want to make sure that my rounds are top notch and then I don't miss my game or miss my game and wound it and have to go chase it. You know, that's not a good ethical shot. So I do mix the new brass in, and I try to do really one reload for my hunting stuff, just because I like the consistency and I know what's gonna happen with it. So let's talk about some of the other things that are happening in the brass market that are affecting us being able to get cases. Well, let's talk about some of the other factors that are definitely driving the case market. Well, one is the consumption of our ammunition. And, you know, there's a lot of figures out there that talk about how much Americans use in shooting. And the statistics I found were that on an average year, between civilian, military training, and law enforcement training, there are over 1 trillion rounds of small caliber ammunition fired. That's 1 trillion rounds. That's a lot of rounds. But I'm sure we're all having really fun doing it. But that's what is one factor that's definitely creating a problem. Now, we know that all the big manufacturers of ammunition, the Remington and all the big boys, they're all having a hard time getting the base products to make the ammunition they sell over the counter. They're working 24/7 right now just to try to keep up. And they're not doing a real great job. I don't know if you've been to your local shooting store, your sporting goods store, or any of that, looking for any specialty ammunition or cases or powder or just range ammunition to go out and shoot. Now, a lot of the reloaders, we're all reloading most of that ourselves, so we're not going there. But there occasionally that I see a good deal and I go, hey, I'm just going to pick up some range ammunition, and that just adds to my brass count. So that does happen, but we've got them working 24/7, and that's a huge issue, because if they're working 24/7 and they can't keep up with 1 trillion rounds, then, you know, really what's going to happen in the future? Now, we know that Lake City, which is the governmental arm that makes the small caliber ammunition for the military, the Department of Defense, and also they sell to law enforcement, FBI, CIA, you know, all those that do training. We know that in 2014, they said that they were making roughly 4 million rounds a day. Now, that's in 2014. I checked the statistics yesterday, and they were saying, well, they make about 1 billion rounds a year. Well, then I started kind of doing the math, going, well, in 2014, they're making 4 million a day, and then now they're only making 1 billion. We're off. So if they were truly making 4 million a day back in 2014, that would be 1.4 billion rounds. Now, that's 10 years ago. So don't you think that they've seen an increase and they've upped their production? So I'm thinking that, you know, Lake City's probably not being really truthful and honest with us, but who cares? Let's just say that it is 1.4 billion and they're still running on old technology. Who knows? But that says that we're way behind the 8 ball, because if we're shooting 1 trillion rounds, you know, that doesn't leave, that leaves everything for the other manufacturers. So I think that that information isn't quite true, but I'm looking out and trying to figure out, well, what's going on in the ammunition industry, and trying to figure out what is happening. And one of the things I found out talking to some people, that the scrap brass price was going up. Now, what I mean by scrap brass price is that shooting ranges, some of them will say, if you shoot it here, you got to leave your brass here. Some will say, if you shoot it here, you can pick your own brass up and nobody else's. Well, back about 2 months ago, there are quite a few very large shooting ranges in Las Vegas. And they put together a container, a shipping container, 30,000 pounds of brass, and they put it out on the open market to sell. Now, they sell this to companies that make range ammunition. So they'll say it's once fired or twice fired or whatever, but those cases have been used once or twice or 3 times, whatever. They've got a pretty good way to figure out if the cases are still good. But they sold that on the open market, okay, to ammunition manufacturers that do this remanufacturing and make range ammunition. They sold it for $4.50 a pound. Now think about that. The new spot price was a week and a half back, was $4.59 a pound. So they sold used brass at the price of new brass. And that's a win for them, but what is that going to do to the cost of range ammunition? It's going to drive that price way up. Why would they pay that kind of a price for it? Well, number one, they need it to keep their manufacturing going. We know that there are 1 trillion rounds shot a year, and that could be a low estimate. So everybody's scrambling for what they can get and what they can use. So that's another big factor to what's happening in the brass market. Well, now let's talk about what the government is even doing right now. The Department of Defense, I'd say DOD, but some people that may go over their head. The DOD is doing is they're going out and they see this issue. So they're going out and on their practice ranges, they're going out and harvesting that brass. They're sorting the brass, they're making sure the brass is in good condition, and then they're selling it back to the remanufacturers to offset the cost of new brass that's being purchased for their new cases. Now, in some cases, they're taking that brass and sending them to smelters and having them melted down and having new cases made out of them. In some cases, they're selling it back to remanufacturers, and that kind of an issue. So we know if the government is watching this that closely, then there really is something going on. But let's really get down to the heart of what's going on. The heart of what's going on is there is a war in Ukraine, and there's a war in Israel, and there are conflicts around the globe. And that's a huge issue. We sent 400 million rounds to Ukraine last year. That's all small caliber stuff. And that's not all of what we've sent them. That's just what was disclosed. They've taken from the Israel compound, our warehousing there, and shipped over to the Ukraine because things are getting low. So we have to look at what's really happening, and it's a global thing. We've got a lot of wars going on, we've got a lot of armed conflicts, and that's going to consume ammunition. Now, one of the big things is we're not making enough right now for the consumer, the retail, us, the shooters out there, the sports shooters. We're competing with the military and law enforcement to be able to get our rounds. Now, I'm not competing as heavy, and you're probably not as competing as heavy because you have cases that you've kept and built up over the years, and you're reloading those. But we still have to be able to get cases and get new ammunition to keep those stockpiles rolling. So it is a huge thing, and I think it's just going to get worse. You know, I've noticed that there's been some talk about NATO, and the NATO stockpiles of ammunition have dwindled immensely. And just recently, I do know the federal government's gone out and contracted with some offshore ammunition manufacturers to upgrade their facilities, to upgrade their output. Now you ask, why are we going offshore to do that? I'm going to say, you're right. What are we thinking? If we're going to defend the United States, we need to make sure that what we make is made here in the United States. Yeah, getting off the political thing. So that's said, that's done. Really, the biggest problem we've got right now is the war. So the war and inflation are going to kill us. So if you're out there and you're a reloader, make sure you're keeping your brass. Anybody that you go out and shoot with that doesn't keep their brass, ask them if you can have their brass, and keep doing what you need to do to keep you up and going. Hey, thank you very much for participating. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you don't want to subscribe, that's fine. Hit the like, that helps the algorithm. God bless America.